Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. I am super duper happy to introduce to my show Kara Nicole Bitar, and I said that correct, yes?
Yes.
Awesome. She's an optimization coach and Kundalini Yoga teacher. So, happy New Year!
Yeah.
2022. This is an exciting time. I feel a lot of good, positive changes happening. So, thank you for being part of that positiveness, that reinforcement that we have going on here for all the people in the world that are tuning in. I'm going to have you choose between three words, Kara, and we can start a conversation from there. Is that okay with you?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. The first word is going to be depression, the second word, transformation, and the third word, Kundalini Yoga.
So let's do transformation.
Transformation. So, why transformation? That's a very powerful word, by the way.
It is a powerful word, and I wanted to start with that because that's really what I've done to my life. I have absolutely transformed it. I have transformed my body, I've transformed my health, I've transformed my relationship with my body, I've transformed my relationships, I have transformed, like, my life looks so different from how it used to look. It's almost like I've lived two separate lives. And I've transformed it in a way that has been just so so exhilarating, so exciting, so ways that have made me look at the world and my experience with such just love and appreciation for myself and for this experience.
So when you say as compared to how it was before, how were you before, and how long ago was that we're going back?
Yeah, so basically, I was a litigator. I practiced law. I practiced at one of the largest law firms in the Southeast. And that was, let's see, so I practiced for about 6 years. And it's been about 3 years since I left that practice. Yeah.
So it's
So,
been so in those 3 years you've had this really great transformation.
yes, absolutely. I have. I've
What
I've
happened?
Yeah, when I was a child, I decided I was going to be an attorney. So I was like in fifth grade, like walking around like the Harvard Law sweatshirts on. And so I planned and prepared my whole life to become an attorney. And I graduated summa cum laude from college. I published as an undergraduate. Then I went on to Duke Law on a scholarship. I published while I was there. And then from there, I was recruited for, and I worked for, like I said before, one of the largest law firms in the Southeast as a litigator. And so what happened was I had everything that I thought I wanted. I had everything that I had worked so hard for. I had this really good job. It was like, it felt prestigious to me. I had this great resume. I was making a lot of money. I had this like charming house in the city and this beautiful wardrobe. And I felt really like appreciated by my colleagues. And I was doing this really like significant legal work. And in addition to that, I was also getting to do a lot of pro bono work for victims of domestic violence. And I was eventually named the head of that project at our firm. So, like on paper, my life just looked perfect. And it just looked like I had everything. And I did have everything that I thought I wanted. Um, but even though I had all of that, I was deeply unhappy. And I didn't entirely know why. Like, part of me blamed it on the job. It was high stress, it was high pressure. We worked a lot. But part of me like didn't blame it on the job. Part of me was just like, I should be happy. And I kept like blaming myself in a way. Like, I should be happy. I have everything. I should be happy. I have everything. And yet I'm super unhappy.
So
So,
I mean that must be really confusing too, because from you would think that, like you said, for if you're observing or someone's looking in, someone would be like, well, that looks like the perfect life, so you must be happy. And then how did it all come? I guess I'm going to use the word crashing down because I've had similar experiences where I feel things are good, then all of a sudden it just, bam, like, hold on, I'm not feeling like all this is real, is really causing me genuine happiness. So at
Yeah.
what point did you actually feel that and recognize and realize that in yourself that it was not genuine?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, I didn't really like college. I didn't really like law school that well. But I kept like having this like, but once I make it, do you know what I mean? Like, but once I get there, then I'll be happy, right?
Yeah,
So then it's like, I get the big time job, I'm making all the money, and it's like I'm there. So it's like I have everything. And now it's like, I can't be like, and then. Do you know what I
right,
mean? And
right,
it's
right.
like, and I'm unhappy. And so, for a while, like at first, of course, when I first started the job, I was just so busy and it was so new that I didn't really have time to think about it. But as I got more into it, as the years started to go on, it's like I got my footing, I knew what I was doing, then, and it didn't, quite frankly, it didn't take that long. It took probably not even a year for me to be like, wow, like I'm really not happy. And it's like it kept getting worse. And I kept trying to make it work. Like I just was like, no, like I've worked so hard to get here. I've given everything to be here and now I have it. And I have this job that most people can't even get. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like it was like I was just like, no, this has to work. But I was just unhappy, and it's like it didn't take too long to kind of me to start kind of realizing, wait a second, I'm not happy. But it just like it just kept getting worse, and it didn't get better. The longer I stayed there, it's not like it got better. And again, they'd kind of say like, well, once you kind of establish yourself in the firm and people respect you, and you've kind of, then maybe, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
and I was really to the point where it's like, okay, so I was at the firm. I was on an 8-year partnership track. I hadn't, made partner yet. I wasn't even up for it. And there was this little part of me that was like, well, once I make partner, but it was like it was too late. Like I knew that that wasn't going to do it by that point. Like I had done that. I'd said that to myself too many times.
So did you go through a time of inner reflection, or did you go through any I need some alone time? Did you take a break? What happened after that?
So I tried, when I was there, I was certainly reflecting on it. I was certainly asking the questions like, is this what life is? And like, why am I unhappy? And I was seeing all sorts of different like healers, and I was like reading as much as I could. Again, I was quite busy though with my job, so there was limited in how much I could do this. Do you know what I mean? And I was trying to get answers and stay in my job at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
But nothing was working. Like nothing was really moving the dial for me. Nothing was really changing things for me. Like I'd go see someone, or I'd maybe like feel better for that afternoon or something. But it
right.
wouldn't last. It was no lasting impact. It was like then I would then start to feel bad again. I'd be back at work and I'd, start to feel bad again. So I certainly was reflecting and trying to get answers, but I didn't get them.
When did you get answers? When did the transformation actually begin?
Yeah, so that wasn't until well after I had left my job. So I eventually just it was like I wasn't in a completely it wasn't like I had complete clear-mindedness about this. It was like part of me was like, "Oh, if I leave this job and the stress and pressure of it, then I'll feel better." But then, it was like but part of me was like there's something else going on here. Because when you work at a big firm like that, if you want to leave that position, the firm will actually help you get another job. They're so well connected. Plus, I had this great resume. So it was like I could have just gotten another job. You know what I mean? But it was like there was this part of me that was like blaming my job, but there was this part of me that was like, no, something else is going on. And if you move to another job, it's going to be different faces, different places, but you're going to feel the same.
Yeah.
So it was like I didn't have this complete mental clarity, but I finally got to the point where I was like, something in my life has to change. And this job was kind of like the biggest thing in my life. So I eventually, quite frankly, it took me years. I got up the courage to leave this job and to do something that, quite frankly, I don't know if anyone at that firm has done, which is I left that job and I didn't have a plan. as to what I was going to do next. I just left. Like, I'm going to leave and I'm not
Yeah.
sure what's going to happen next, but that's what I decided to do.
Well, it sounds like you were trusting your intuition at that point.
To a certain extent, I don't think I realized what I was doing, quite frankly. But I think that yes, now looking back, yes, I would say I was actually following like myself and trusting myself. I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, it was just like, I didn't quite frankly have a clear understanding of what I was doing. But I would say in retrospect, yes, that was actually what I was doing.
I can imagine that would be really difficult to leave a job that you went to school for and so much time that you put into. Because I mean, I've had similar experiences having my doctorate in psychology, and I have a podcast, and I'm a
Mm,
writer. But it's
mm,
like it's okay. I think where I'm learning as I'm meeting people such as yourself, that it's okay to change your what you want to do in life. Just because you have something underneath your belt doesn't mean you have to stick to it. But it's actually a really good platform that you at least have that underneath your, as a walkway, as a path to lead you to where you are today.
yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that experience was a very rich experience for me in which I learned so much. But we don't have to choose, like, it's not just like we have to stay in
No,
something.
we don't.
We're not stuck. We're not.
Right.
I felt stuck. I have to say I did. I felt
Oh,
stuck,
I can
but we're not.
imagine.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here you are, about to transform now. What kind of thoughts were you having in the middle of your transformation? Like, what am I going to do now? Were you feeling lost, or did you just feel like a breath of fresh air? Like, okay,
No.
I'm out of that job.
No, I felt lost. I really did. So again, like I was in kind of this, I didn't have this great mental clarity. So I leave the job and part of me thinks, give me 2 weeks away from this like stress and pressure and I'll figure something out. But then part of me was like, oh my goodness, what in the world are you going to do if you leave this job? Like, this is what you know, this is what you've worked your whole life for. So, what ended up happening was I left, and after I left, I realized that I was not in a good state physically. It was like when that stress went away, it was like I just completely crashed. Like I had no energy. It's like I went from operating on this super high level and I went to a place of I felt like I couldn't even drive. I mean, it was this
Yeah.
massive like shift. And then the more surprising thing that happened was, you would think I would be able to look at all of the things that I did and look at my resume and be like, okay, I'm not doing it now, but I've done it. I know I can do it. And then I would get some level of like, I'd feel some level of like worth or value from that or somehow feel good about myself. But
Hmm.
it was like when that job went away, it was like every shred of value that I thought that I had or self-worth that I thought that I had, it just went right with it. I mean, I just felt completely and utterly worthless. I just felt terrible about myself. And so when I'm seeing these two things happen, like my body's not in a good state and then I'm not in a good state, I basically made the decision, okay, I'm going to give everything I have, like my resources, my time, I'm going to make it my full-time job into finding answers, into finding, can I have a different experience? Can I feel differently? Can my body feel differently? And so that's what I did. I made it basically my full-time job to like find answers. And so I just like, I researched, I read, I experimented, I went to see all sorts of different healers. I took workshops, I took classes, I trained in a number of modalities and practiced those modalities for a little bit. Um, and I did all sorts of things for like my health, like cleanses and saunas and floats and like you name it. It was like I did it. At the same time I was doing all these things, I was really giving them like a good try. I wasn't just like jumping. I was researching them beforehand and then doing them. And um, so yeah, so that's what I basically made a full-time job for myself
So
after I
when you were
left.
in the middle looking through all these different modalities, what did you find worked and what didn't work?
So that's a good question. And so this is interesting. So I did that for a year and a half. I did that for a year and a half. That's all I did. I made that my full-time job. And after a year and a half, I would say I was in worse health than I was when I was working. And
Hmm.
I would say I felt worse. And so this was like, I would say, one of the darkest moments for me in my life because it was this moment of I've done all of these things and nothing has worked. And so maybe that this is just what life is. It's just not that great. Like we watch our bodies deteriorate. We're kind of plagued by thoughts of like fear and unworthiness um we sacrifice ourselves and our well-being for things that we want, you know what I mean? So it's like, and that's what life is. It's just not that great. And so that's where I was after a year and a half of doing
Trying
this,
and looking at, yeah.
trying and looking. Yeah. Yeah.
So then at what point, what happened with, how did you get into transforming your body? Or what was the first
Yeah.
thing that started to transform? How about that?
Yeah. So what happened was one day, so I had these moments of like, I should just go back to the law practice, right? It was like a year and a half removed. I could still go back. But it was like there was part of me that was just like, keep going. And so one day I turned on a Kundalini Yoga class. And after that class, I felt different. I felt lighter. I felt like clear minded. And so I kept doing Kundalini Yoga classes. And the more I did them, the better I felt. I started to, it's like the aches and pains in my body started to go away. And I started to feel energized, like not an energy you get from like being stressed out or an energy you get from like a stimulant, like a true, like energized about life. And I started to have a different relationship with my thoughts. And in addition to that, I I started to have this sense of like value, not from something that I was like doing, like this external thing that I was doing, but just from like who I was. And so as I was getting these changes through Kundalini Yoga, I ended up training in it. Not because I thought I would teach it, I really didn't know at the time.
Hmm.
But I want to know like what is this thing that's changing my life really, that's making such a difference in my life. And so then I went and trained in it. And as I trained in it, I learned more about it, why it was kind of making these changes. Um, and then
Kara, for the people, for our listeners who do not know what Kundalini yoga is, could you explain it a little bit?
Sure. So Kundalini Yoga. So it depends kind of where you're at. Like the West Coast has more Kundalini Yoga than kind of the East Coast, I think. But like a yoga that you might see in most yoga studios is like a hatha yoga. It's like a very kind of posture pose based kind of yoga. And that's kind of the focus. It's on postures and poses, which is certainly valuable. So Kundalini Yoga, it looks quite different. If you were to like watch a Kundalini Yoga class, it's going to look pretty different from
I've tried it. There's
like
a lot of
have
breathing that happens.
you? There's a lot of breathing. So it uses postures and poses, but it also uses a lot of breath work. So there's a lot of different types of breathing. It also uses a lot of sound. So it uses sound currents. So you'll be like, it's a use of mantra that comes from the science of sound. It uses hand positions and eye positions because the hands and the eyes, like they're connected to the brain. So we can impact certain parts of the brain by different hand positions and eye positions. And then it uses relaxation and meditation. So it's very dynamic. And so every class even they look a little bit kind of classes can kind of vary from class to class, but so it's using all of those things. And what it's doing when it's using all of those things is it's working the physical body, and in particular it's working it really focuses a lot on the nervous system and the glandular system in addition to other systems. But it's also working the mind. So it's helping you to control and direct your mind. It's helping release and get rid of subconscious like things that are in the subconscious. It's working on an emotional level, so it can help you get rid of suppressed emotions like anger. It's working on an energetic level, so when we're dealing with like the chakras and the electromagnetic field. And so it's kind of like it's doing all of these things in one practice, so it does look kind of different. And I would say what it's doing is it really offers a lot of bang for the buck, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel that it's also very ancestral. That's kind of the feeling I had the times that I've tried it. I felt like, wow, this is really getting down to my roots.
Yeah. It is. It's so fascinating. I quite frankly think like there have been some scientific studies looking at Kundalini Yoga and the impact, and I would say we're catching up to
Yes.
what they knew. It's like I don't even think we totally understand why it's working so as well as it's working, but it's like you can feel it. Like you feel like I didn't know what Kundalini Yoga was when I started doing it. I just sat down and started doing it. It seemed quite frankly odd to me. Like a lot of the things we were doing, they seemed odd.
I felt that way the first time I did it.
Yeah.
I was like, I was almost embarrassed, but there
Yeah.
was, I'm like, I'm alone. Why am I embarrassed trying this? I'm like, okay, let's just have fun here.
Yeah, but it's like you feel it. Like I felt it. I felt it was doing something, and then I started to see the results. I started to experience myself the results of it. So,
How long did it take you to start feeling like, okay, I'm really enjoying this and I want to teach it?
that's a good question. I mean, the first class I felt a shift in the very first class I took. But it was like the more I did it, the more I benefited from it. And then once I went to the teacher training and I started to understand more about it, then I was like, this is something I want to share with other people. Because if other people knew about this,
Right.
they could have a very different experience. And the interesting thing
Uh-huh.
about Kundalini Yoga is some of the different like meditations and postures and poses and whatnot, like some of the things that practices that you do in it is a better term. They take 3 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
like it's like once you have some of these kind of under your belt, you can just pull them out as you need them. There's a practice called fist of anger. So if you're like feeling angry or frustrated, pull out fist of anger. Or if you've got a lot of suppressed anger, pull out fist of anger.
What is it?
There's
Fist of anger.
fist of anger. Yeah, it's one of the. It's great. It's basically this practice that you do, where it is actually like releasing suppressed anger. Because what happens is like when we get angry and we suppress, it's like we throw it into our cells, we throw it into our electromagnetic field or our aura, and it's just wreaking havoc basically. And
Yeah.
this practice is it's the only thing I've ever done. So many people told me different things to do to get, to deal with these emotions. None of them worked for me. This practice worked. It worked so well. You can feel the difference. You can actually feel the difference as you're doing the practice. How the practice feels will change to you because that anger is leaving and you'll feel that difference. But it takes like 3 minutes.
Why is it called the fist of anger? What do you do
The
with your
fist,
fist?
because you take the fist, you actually make them into you take the hands, you make them into fists, and
Yeah.
then what you're doing for the motion is the hands like a backstroke over the head. So you're bringing the fist over the head, and what you're doing when you're doing that is you're actually moving through that field, the
Oh,
aura or the
wow.
electromagnetic field that surrounds the body.
Yeah.
And then you're also breathing, so you have an O-shaped mouth, and you're inhaling, exhaling powerfully through the O-shaped
Oh,
mouth. So it's
wow.
like,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
what
that's the whole
happens
tribal
is,
thing.
yeah. So what happens is though people think when they start doing fists of anger, they think, "Oh, I'm out of shape" because they're getting tired. They're getting like tired. It's
Right.
actually not that. They're actually moving through that field. They're moving through that anger and it's so interesting. Once you do it enough and you really feel it release, you can like now I can do fists of anger like it's nothing for me to do fists of
Yeah.
anger because my field that it's changed. And then and it ends in a particular way too, to kind of like these practices are kind of dynamic. There's a particular ending that it has as well that is also part of it. But
So
I
you
mean, it
do that
takes
for
three
three
minutes.
minutes?
Yep, 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and it works. And then there's another, like, there's other practices. Like if you're feeling blocked, there's a practice you can do 3 minutes. If you're feeling low energy or you're feeling like down or lethargic, there's a practice you can do. It takes 3 minutes. So I think going to class is wonderful. Of course, I recommend it. But also, too, part of it is you go to class and you start learning these different things, and then you've kind of got this, you have them. You can always pull them out and use them as you need them. Like, I really, quite frankly, can't imagine not having these practices in my life now that I can just pull out and use that makes such a difference.
Wow, that's really amazing. I can't
Yeah.
wait to try it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that the fist of anger also helps for other types of intense emotions.
It certainly does, because when you're looking at emotions, you're looking at a spectrum. It's like anger is like a more. It's like it's this. There's it's really you're dealing with the same emotion as like sadness or
Yeah,
depression.
it's really just a frequency.
Yeah, and the sadness and depression are actually they're less powerful forms. Like you actually rather be angry than sad or depressed. You know what I mean? Anger is like a more powerful kind of state to be in. And
Hmm.
so even so when we do that practice in class, I do tell people like whatever you're sad about, whatever you feel depressed about. Because what happens with fists of anger when you're doing it, when you're doing the practice, you actually bring up what you're angry about. So you think about it, right? It's like a lot of times people
Wow.
don't want to think about that stuff because it's
Right,
like,
right.
if I bring that up, what do I do with it? I'm just going to feel bad. So you actually provoke it and you bring it up during the practice and then you let it come out of you. So it's really cool.
It sounds cool. I can't wait
Yeah.
to try it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, wow, that's really great. I can also feel, I'm also imagining that this would also be great, Kundalini would be great for kids as well.
Oh yeah, there are practices like there's even one we had one of the people in my class, they had a child or not, there was a grandchild dealing with some issues and I just made a little video for them like here's a good meditation and because too and I think children are actually more in a way in tune with it. It's like,
They are.
"Oh, yeah, I can see that this would help me," you know?
Right, right. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're definitely more willing to do.
Yeah.
They're not going to be embarrassed.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It might actually be fun for them.
I think so, yeah.
So, how does optimization coach mesh with Kundalini yoga? How do you bring those two together?
So once I, the more I did Kundalini yoga, it was like the more clear minded I got and the more inspired that I felt. And when that happened, it was like I started to see, okay, all of these things that I did before that didn't seem to work. Like, why was that? Why didn't they work? And what is it that does work? Like, what is it that can really bring about transformation in our lives? And as I started to see that, then I started to be like, oh, it's like this is what can bring about transformation. And this is why this didn't work. And this is why this would work. And what ended up happening was I started to like kind of use these understandings that were kind of coming to me to take myself even further into what it was into like basically a different life for myself. And I developed programs that incorporate Kundalini Yoga, but they also use kind of this information, I would say kind of a methodology in a sense that basically that came to me, that I came up with, and that I used to really change our lives, to give us, like, I would say really what these programs do is they bring a person into what I would say the truth of who they are is. We have these kind of conceptions of ourselves where these very kind of limited, deficient, powerless beings, and really nothing could be further from the truth. And
Right.
so what these programs are really about is giving a person an understanding of who they are, how they function, and then, once they understand who they are and how they function, then it's like now you have a really good platform to move forth and live the life that you want to live, the life that feels good to you, the life that I would say that you're meant to live. And so I have two programs. One is called The Foundation and one is called Thoughts. And so Thoughts is really dealing with understanding that our minds are meant to serve us. Like a lot of people kind of have this concept of the mind. It's like, oh, my mind's off just doing these things I
Right.
don't want it to be doing. No, the mind is meant to serve us, and we can control and direct the mind and use the mind to benefit us in profound ways. So I have these two programs, and in the programs I have recorded information for people because I tried to make them as efficient, as effective as possible. So if you're a busy attorney, if you're a busy doctor, whatever it is, you can still do them. And then they involve one-on-one coaching. They involve Kundalini Yoga. I customize the Kundalini Yoga to people. I understand what it's like to be busy. And so it's like, I kind of give them practices that work for them. And then the programs also involve these particular readings that I do for people. One is called a manifesting blueprint and one is called a soul realignment reading. So I basically like took all of the kind of the things. It's like, what are the things that really move the dial? What are the things that really work? And what are the things that don't move the dial and don't really work? And I took all the things that really work and I put them into these two programs for people.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing program.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see you light up as you talk about it, so I know that this is definitely the path you're meant to be on.
Yeah, so I just felt so, all of those years, I felt so confused. I felt so lost. I felt like I was trying all these things that weren't working and I didn't understand why they weren't working. And in the midst of it all, I felt bad. I wasn't in love with my life. I didn't feel energized by life. I didn't feel passionate about life. I didn't, have the relationships that I wanted. I didn't have the health that I wanted, like all the things, and I'm trying all these different things and they're not moving the dial for me. They're not working, but I'm spending all this time and money doing them and then getting frustrated by them. Do you know what I mean? And the fact of the matter is we can have such a different experience. Like we can have an experience where we revel in this experience, where we revel in ourselves, where we love ourselves, where we are just kind of like blown away in a sense by the magnificence of ourselves in this experience. And it's it's such really a travesty to me that so many people aren't getting to experience that or aren't seeing that. Like I just remember in my job, I remember going into work and in the morning I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'd see my colleague be like, how are you? And they'd be like, living the dream, like this sarcastic kind of response. And
It's
it's
as if
just,
they were also kind of in the same kind of feeling the same way you were, but they weren't doing anything
yeah.
about it. They were kind of just staying there.
Yeah, I think there's really this kind of idea that like this is just what life is. And when you're in a career like that and you're making all that money and everyone's telling you you have a great job, it's like, well, I have it good. But it's like there's this, it's so interesting. It's like we set this really high bar for ourselves in terms of like the education we get or the degrees we have, or we set this really high bar. But then it's like in terms of how we feel, it's like we set this low bar. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so we have these like very educated, intelligent, like people who are like driven and disciplined and committed. And it's like, set this really high bar for themselves. But then when it comes to like how they actually like felt, it's like this low bar, and it's like kind of
Hmm.
this belief that's like that's just what life is, and it isn't. That is not just what life is. I mean, this is such, we're all like unique beings, and it's like, so you're this unique being, almost like you're this one of a kind work of art, and you're in this time, in this moment, in this experience. Like this isn't going to happen again. Like this is this unique
Hmm.
experience that like you get to have, and it's like don't waste it. And it's not that it's intentional that people are having that the experience that they are. They don't understand.
Yeah, they're not fully aware of
You
the
can
the
have a different
soul and
experience.
and mind connection, or
Yeah.
your higher self and your I guess your human self have to come together and have to align.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
challenge because we're too busy living human life, and then soul life is down here. But it's like
Mhm.
your higher self is actually needs to be here and here.
Yeah, you can come into alignment with yourself. And like that's, you really can. You can fully embody yourself and come into alignment with yourself instead of kind of living this. It's almost like most people are living this life that isn't actually them. It's not actually who they are. It's not expressive of what I would say the truth of who they are actually is. And so some of the readings that I do for people look at specifically like at soul level, what is a person's gifts and talents? And how are they structured to thrive in this experience? And, just again, it goes back to when we really understand ourselves and how we function, we can have such a different experience. But we're very, there's some very kind of pervasive messaging out there
Hmm.
that is not about us being our own
Yeah.
unique selves and embodying that. It's like, it's almost like everyone wants the same things and everyone should be happy when they all get the same things. And we're not the same, we're different.
I can imagine it's really difficult too for especially the newer generations. Just everything's in the palm of their hands, and they're looking at a video or a picture of what they should be like and what their life should be like, and then they end up getting that and they're not happy. And
Yeah.
that's I imagine that's probably why suicide rates are higher and why there's just so much depression going on, because people are losing their true essence and they're getting lost in what isn't.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I would say it's just so true. Like people, they really they have within them so much. It's like we have these concepts of like it's all about us getting all this external stuff and that's the stuff that makes us who we are. not that's not true at all.
No, it's not.
Those things are like our creative expressions that we get to, they're good things, they're wonderful things, and we're expressing creatively and we're having all these external things. But those don't make us. They're not who we are. They're not what we are. They're just like these things that we get to like experience and have fun with, or that we can experience and have fun with.
Hmm.
But there is this within us, this, I would say the truth of who we are. And it's magnificent.
Oh
It
yeah,
is.
creation. That's
Mm-hmm.
the truth of who we are, and that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
here to do. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing. And thank you for being on my show and for motivating me to do more Kundalini yoga. And now I know how to battle through my anger, do my little King Kong pose here. Thanks so much for being on my show. This was really amazing. I really do feel inspired. And how can our audience find you?
The best way is just go to my website, www.karanicolebitar.com, and on there you can see everything I offer, and I offer free discovery calls for people too. So, they can schedule a call and see if what I'm offering is really the best fit for them.
That's excellent. Thanks so much for offering your light and for motivating our listeners to encourage them to get in touch with their higher self and to try Kundalini yoga.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun being here.
Awesome. Anytime. Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you.
To you too.